Hey everybody, it's Alexa at Encircle Acupuncture in Nashville, and welcome to Acupressure Wednesday. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm glad you're here. We're going to do some acupressure today. It's the middle of the week, and you're going to feel better after our acupressure session today. So thanks for joining us. I'm doing a 5-part series on the emotions and traditional Chinese medicine. And each week we're going to talk about a different emotion. There are 5 emotions in traditional Chinese medicine: grief, anger, worry, fear, and joy. And this week we're talking about grief. And so each week of this series, I am discussing a little bit about the traditional Chinese medicine perspective on that emotion, and I'll be showing you some points that can help balance out that emotion. So each week, I'm showing you some general points for emotional balance. There are a lot of points that we use that are sort of generally help to benefit the emotions. So I'll show you one of those points each week, and then I'm also going to show you some specific points for the one emotion that we're talking about that week. So this week we're talking about grief. So I'm going to show you some points for grief. Grief is related to the lungs in traditional Chinese medicine. And so we'll be doing some points that are going to benefit the lungs as well. TCM, or traditional Chinese medicine, has some interesting things to say about the emotions. So I will talk about that throughout this series. So let's start today just kind of settling into our bodies and getting comfortable and relaxing. So let's start and just take a few breaths. You want to have your feet on the floor. Just sit comfortably, nice neutral spine, feet on the floor. You can close your eyes or leave them open and just breathe comfortably for a few breaths. I'm going to close my eyes. You can do that or you can keep them open. And just check in with your body and see how you're feeling. See if your body is trying to send you any signals. Are you feeling muscle tension anywhere? Are you having pain? Are you having numbness or tingling anywhere? Does anything feel hot or cold? And while we're taking this moment to check in, I want you to especially check in with your lungs, with your breathing, with your chest area, because that's where we'll be focusing today when we're talking about the lungs in grief. So just say hello to your lungs today and see how you're feeling. I'm feeling okay today. Got a little tightness up here in my shoulders. And then at the end of today's session, we'll do the same exercise and see if anything has changed. So next exercise we're going to do to prepare for our session is just a gathering exercise. So you can do this either seated or standing. I'm going to stand up for it. And seated or standing, you want your both feet on the floor, feet about hip width apart. If you're standing, you want a little bit of a bend in your knees, no locked knees. And you're going to inhale. And as you inhale, you're going to raise your arms overhead with your palms up. And then exhale and lower your palms and bring them to rest on your lower abdomen. Let's do that a few times. Inhale. And exhale. And you can also pay attention to your breathing in this, again, because we're going to be working on our lungs today. And just imagine gathering in some qi from your environment and bringing it in to your body and into this energy center in your lower abdomen. We call this our Dan Tian. So inhale. Take as much qi as you need. There's plenty for everyone. Exhale as you bring it down. And let's do that one more time. Nice big inhale. And exhale as you bring all that nice fresh qi into your body. We're going to circulate that during our session. And then finally, let's just rub our hands together and get some good qi flowing to our palms and our fingertips. Get your hands nice and warm. All right, and your hands should feel nice and tingly now. Maybe the skin on your hands has changed colors, gotten a little red, gotten a little dark. That's good. That means we've got qi flowing to our fingertips, which is what we want. Okay, so again, we're doing a series on the emotions and traditional Chinese medicine. Each week, we're talking about a different emotion and how to balance out that emotion in the body. Each week I'm going to show you one point that is just sort of a general balancing point for the emotions, and then some other points that work specifically on the emotion that we are discussing that week. And this week we're talking about grief, and grief is related to the lungs in traditional Chinese medicine. And the lungs are really our first line of defense against any sort of invading pathogens, so it's important to keep our lungs healthy. So the first point I'm going to show you is really just a general point. We use this for lots of different emotional conditions, but I like to use this point for grief because it's on the chest, and we tend to hold grief in our chest. And so when a person is having an experience of grief, you really feel it in your chest. Your chest feels heavy, your chest feels tight. You tend to sort of cave in on your chest when you're experiencing grief or sadness. And this point is going to help to just disperse qi throughout the chest. So this point is Ren 17, and it's located here on the midline of your chest, and it's located in the fourth intercostal space, or the fourth space between the ribs. And to find this point, so it's going to be right here on the center of your sternum. To find this point, you can just sort of palpate down your sternum until it feels like you're kind of in the center here, or you can count the ribs, and your first rib sort of wraps under your clavicle here. So that's 1, 2, 3, fourth intercostal space is here. And so that point, Ren 17, is just right in line with the fourth intercostal space. It's fine to do acupressure through your clothes, so that's totally fine. And just rub this spot in some circles. It's pretty tender on me today. It might be tender on you too. So this point helps to disperse qi throughout the chest. That's why I like this point for grief. So, like I said, every emotion in TCM has an associated organ, an associated element, and lots of other associations in the natural world as well. There's an associated season, time of day, color, etc. So grief is associated with the lungs, with the fall season, with the color white. And the lungs in traditional Chinese medicine, like I said, that's our first line of defense against invading pathogens. And the lungs will, their primary function is to descend and disperse qi throughout the rest of the body. Now, the way that grief affects the lungs. So in TCM, a prolonged experience of one emotion can damage that organ that it's associated with, and other areas of the body as well. So prolonged grief tends to weaken the lungs. So that's really the big thing that grief does. It weakens the lungs, it consumes the qi, and so a person undergoing prolonged grief tends to experience fatigue and shortness of breath. Also, because the lungs are our first line of defense against the outside world, then prolonged experience of grief can weaken the immune system too, and it's very important to have a strong immune system. So this point here, Ren 17, good for any kind of emotional imbalances, but especially good for grief because it helps to open up the chest and disperse qi throughout the chest and keeps your lungs healthy and strong and doing their job of taking in air from our surroundings. All right. So the next point we're going to do is on the lung channel, and that's lung 1. So it's located over here on the side of the chest. The lung channel is on both sides, so you can do either side or you can do both sides. That's fine. So lung 1 is located right, if you follow the clavicle out sort of to the armpit, if you follow the clavicle out, your finger's going to fall into a bit of a depression right here under the clavicle. That's lung 2. And then just a little bit below that is lung 1. Sometimes these points are used interchangeably. So what you can do is just feel on yourself, feel for what's the more tender spot on you, and then spend some time massaging that spot. And it might be different from day to day. One day it might be lung 1, the other day it might be lung 2. So again, lung 2, lung 1. I'm going to palpate both of those on myself. And for me today, lung 2 is a little more tender, so I'm going to spend some time on lung 2. You can massage in circles. You can also just get your thumbs and just sort of press your thumbs in there. So lung 1 is what we call a front mu point, and it is the front mu point of the lung channel and of the lung organ. And so a front mu point is where we can really access the chi of that organ and have an effect on that organ. This point helps to clear any sort of pathogenic factors from the lungs. So if you've picked up a bug somewhere, this point helps to help the lungs do their function of clearing that out. It helps to strengthen the lungs. So if you're feeling weak, tired, some difficulty breathing, it'll help strengthen the lungs. And like Ren 17, it disperses chi throughout the chest. So it's a really important point for the lungs. And, it's really important right now to be taking care of our lungs because this has been a difficult year for everyone. We're going through an immense time of grief. I mean, worldwide, as of right now, we've had 1.5 million deaths from COVID. So that's significant. We are missing our family and friends. We're not able to have contact with them like we usually do. We're grieving over those losses and the loss of what was normal beforehand. So we're going through a really immense time of sadness, and it's important that we process those emotions because if they get stuck, then they can do damage to the body. And so take some time to feel your grief. It's good to take some deep breaths when you're massaging those points. It's normal to be experiencing grief. It's part of life. Loss is a part of life. So what we want to do with acupressure and TCM is to help us process those emotions so that they don't get stuck in our bodies and do physical damage to our bodies. And, this is just one perspective on the emotions. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a counselor or a therapist. So this is just a TCM perspective, but I hope you'll find it helpful. Okay, so let's move on to another point. Next, we're going to do lung 3, which is located on the upper arm. I'm going to take off my sweater so you can see it on my arm, so you can see exactly where it's located. So lung 3 is located on the upper arm, and the lung channel starts in the lungs and it flows down the arm down to the thumb. And so the lung channel is going to be on the lateral part of the biceps muscle. So your biceps muscle here on the arm, it's this muscle here. The lung channel is going to flow down the lateral side of it or the thumb side of it, okay? So let me stand up and show you my whole arm. So the lung channel is going to flow down this side of the biceps because that's where your thumb goes. If you're on this side of your biceps muscle, you're on the wrong channel. So it's not the pinky side, it's the thumb side, okay? So that's the lung channel. And lung 3 is a point along this side of the lateral side of the biceps from your from this axillary crease, it's about the width of your 4 fingers together. So find this axillary crease here, just where your armpit ends. Measure with about 4 fingers, and then feel around along the side of this muscle. I found it. This is a point that is often tender, and when you hit the right spot, often you'll just inhale reflexively or have some kind of reaction because when you hit it, it's a strong point. All right, there it is on me. I can feel it very strongly on me today. Very tender. Okay, I'm going to show you on my other arm as well. So lung channel runs down the lateral side or the thumb side of your arm. So here's the axillary crease, 4 fingers, and find the biceps muscle on the lateral side, on the thumb side, and just feel around for a tender spot. Yep, there it is. Don't worry so much about perfectly measuring. It's more important to pay attention to what you're feeling. And if a point feels tender, feels sore, that generally means that you've hit the right spot. So lung 3, the name of this point in Chinese means heavenly palace. And this is a point for processing grief. Specifically, this is like the grief point on the lung channel. So it helps you process grief, and it supports the lungs, and it uplifts the spirit, or the shen. We call that the shen in traditional Chinese medicine. It's really a point that's all about receptivity and self-worth. So it restores a healthy sense of self-worth. Sometimes when you're going through a period of grief, then your self-worth will suffer because of all of the sadness. It just consumes you. So this point helps to restore that. And again, your lungs will often react. When you hit this point in the right spot, you'll often just inhale reflexively. So that's lung 3. And let's do one more point on the lung channel. We're going to do lung 7, which is located here on the wrist. And again, the lung channel flows down to the thumb. And to find lung 7, you can locate that with your palm facing your chest. And here, this is the styloid process. There's going to be a little bump here, and then a little depression just proximal to that bump or towards the elbow. The easiest way to find lung 7 is just to join your hands together here at your thumb and your forefinger, and your index finger is going to naturally just fall into lung 7 right there. This is another good point just for generally strengthening the lungs and improving lung function. It doesn't have the same sort of emotional component for grief as lung 3 does, but it's just a nice point for benefiting the lungs. And again, right now we're going through a really heavy time worldwide with COVID. In this country, we've been through a difficult election. We're having some very needed conversations on race in this country. It's all necessary, but it's painful, and it's causing a lot of sadness. And then along with the grief of just losing so many people to a pandemic, that just compounds everything else going on. We've lost our connection with people because we can't be in person together. So it's natural to be going through a time of grief. What we want to do is feel that, but help our body process it so it doesn't get stuck and it doesn't further weaken our lungs and weaken our immune system. Now, the benefit of grief, and there is a benefit of grief contracts by nature, and it encourages introspection. And so when you're feeling grief, that's an opportunity to get in touch with those sources of sadness. And what is your body trying to tell you in that grief? Maybe there's something that you need to pay attention to that you haven't. So it's an opportunity to get in touch with what's happening with you emotionally and really identify those sources of sadness. And these acupressure points just help you to process through all of that, help you feel supported and balanced while you're doing that, and also help to keep the lungs strong, specifically when you're processing grief and sadness, so that they those emotions don't further weaken your system or do any sort of have any long-term effects on the body. So those are some points for grief. I hope that is helpful. We're going to end today by just checking in with our bodies again, like we did in the beginning. So just sit comfortably, feet on the floor, take some breaths. You can close your eyes if you like, and just see how you're feeling as compared with when we started 20 minutes ago. I'm going to close my eyes for just a couple of breaths. You can do the same, or you can leave them open. It's fine. All right, so one thing I notice is that I am breathing deeper without even realizing it. So at the beginning, when I checked in with my breathing in my lungs, I didn't realize that I was breathing a little shallowly. And now I'm definitely breathing more deeply after massaging those points. So that feels really good. Still got a little tension in my shoulder, so I can still work on that. But my lungs definitely feel stronger. I am feeling a little more open in the chest and definitely breathing deeper. So thank you so much for joining us today. I hope this helped. I hope you enjoyed it. It's good seeing all of you here. I'm looking at the comments. Hello, Mary Lou. So good to see you. Thanks everyone for joining. We are, like I said, we're doing a 5-part series on the emotions and traditional Chinese medicine. So I hope that you will continue to join us. If you have any questions or comments or suggestions, just please leave those in the comments section. We appreciate you joining us, and we'll see you again next week for Acupressure Wednesday. Thanks, everybody. Bye.